I think both sides recognize how terrible a military conflict would be. But you could take something like Nancy Pelosi's trip.
I was just thinking.
Okay.
Would that trigger it?
The fact that we're simply talking about it, that we're so close to the edge. It's not the old days. The old days.
But it doesn't take much, right?
The United States used to be a dominant military power. Think about it. The New World Order began in 1945. The United States won the war. We had 80% of the world's money. Gold was money then. We were half the world's GDP, and we're a military power. So nobody wanted to fight. If you look at the history of these things over a period of time, when you have then comparable powers, and there's disagreements, it can be resolved quite often by a conflict. And so that's the nature. We're no longer the dominant power. So it becomes closer. So now when we deal with existential issues for different parties, there is a risk of these things.
You know, that was one of my most favorite interviews, only because it's good to get inside someone like a Ray Dalio's brain, who has a unique skill in connecting Wall Street with Main Street, but Wall Street with the world, and his concerns that China, and keep in mind this was almost a year ago, that China and the United States are coming to blows, that it seems inevitable to him that one way or the other, we are going to come to blows here, that China feels more secure. We're not the dominant economic power we were. He echoed that again this past weekend. Another fellow who knows a thing or two of this whole connection, General Jack Keane, with us right now. General, what he was saying almost a year ago seems to be playing out now. This notion that we assume that China needs us a lot more than we need them. We assume that they're not going to risk, shaking any cages because, well, they don't want to do what Russia's done and be alienated in the world. His feeling was they're quite content with where they stand. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, but I don't agree with his characterization. I mean, the reason why this tension and conflict exists is because China is aggressive. They're repressive at home. They have concentration camps with the Uyghurs, which, by the way, Mr. Dalio issued a moral equivalency. He says China's Uyghur issue compares to racism in the United States, which I find kind of stark and totally disagree with. The issue is China's aggression, Neil, is why the tension exists. It is China for the last 10 years that has been intimidating, coercing our allies, not just Taiwan, which is very visible, but also Japan, the Philippines, a partner, not an ally in Vietnam. Hundreds of fishing ships being harassed every single day, told to me by their Minister of Interior and Defense Minister. The same thing happening in the Philippines on a regular basis. These are things that don't get visibility. China built the South China Sea Islands, told Obama that they were just for commercial and economic purposes. They're all militarized. They're there to take control of the South China Sea. It's China's aggression in the Indo-Pacific region and a desire to replace the United States as a global power and change the international order that is driving the tension. And it's President Xi, in the last month, 3 times, went after the United States as an adversary and in a way that he had not in the past, implying potential conflict. The President of the United States, at best, will say that China is a competitor. I wish he would say they're an adversary, which I think they really are, or actually an enemy, which I think they really are. But no, we have to place the foot of this responsibility where it lies, and that is with the Chinese Communist Party and what their strategic objectives are. Domination of the Indo-Pacific region and the world writ large, and that is why the tension exists.
You know, one of the things he did go on to say, and he's not a fan of the Chinese, he's just saying that he's reading their cockiness as a sign that he doesn't think that we have the stomach for a protracted economic war with China, that Americans won't accept the higher prices and maybe no available goods that comes with that, and that we're soft, that we're not what we were, that America's best days are behind it. Again, I want to stress that Dalio himself does not believe that. He just said that that is the thinking, in the Chinese Communist Party, and maybe could explain some, I hope I'm getting this right, General, rowdy acts. What do you think?
Well, there's no doubt that President Xi has said this many times. And by the way, my sources in dealing with China are not Western media and what China is saying to business leaders, and many of them, mouth their talking points. My sources are what the Chinese are saying internally to their own business people, state-owned enterprises, and also to other government officials. And the reality is, yeah, President Xi personally believes that the United States is in decline and that China is on a path to replace it as the most influential power in the world. And that certainly is part of his motivation. And that is why people like myself, who know there's been an erosion of military deterrence in the region particularly, and very specifically when it comes to different weapons capabilities, that we should correct that as quickly as we can and replace it with strength so that China is not tempted to use violence and conflict to achieve its strategic objectives. Economically, the United States is still has the #1 economy in the world, and certainly we have our ups and downs, and we're having a down period right now.
Right.
But given the cycles our economy is going through, I think we will come back, certainly, and we'll still have a very strong economy. The fact that the United States doesn't dominate the entire world anymore economically and militarily shouldn't be surprised. The United States helped to establish a world out there that had peace and stability in it because of the international order, and raised all boats economically. And what took place in the Indo-Pacific region in Southeast Asia has a lot to do with the United States military maintaining stability and security in that region, and it added to the prosperity of those nations. Give the United States some real credit for having a lot more competitors out there, which I think is a better thing for the world economically than where we were before.
Or does it warrant the reaction the Chinese are giving it now? I don't hear thank you. I hear something that's a little more crass. We'll see what happens, General. Always good seeing you, my friend.